Well, howdy y'all, welcome back to the Social Regressive. You guys know that I am always on the lookout for scopes that have the Horus Tremor 3 or Tremor 5 reticles in them. I am nuts about these reticles, and what we're looking at right here is actually the least expensive way to get into a Tremor 3 or Tremor 5, and you actually have a choice of either one. Before we dive into the full review of this scope, let's talk about why I'm crazy about this reticle and why, I'm just looking for any scope that's wrapped around it. The Tremor 3 and the Tremor 5 are both very similar. Tremor 5 is just a little bit simpler in some ways than the other. But look at it right here. This is a massive Christmas tree reticle that's probably giving you guys some heart palpitations if you don't like a lot of stuff in your scope. It has a lot of stuff. It has all this stuff. But what this does really is magical. If you want to be able to make a very precise hit without taking your eye out of the scope, without touching anything on here except maybe the parallax adjustment, and you want to be able to make a very precise shot very quickly, then this is the reticle for you. As long as you know your drops at some of your known distances, like if you know that at 400 yards you're going to have 3.2 mils of drop, then you can hold up the correct amount on this reticle, again without touching any turrets. And then each of these dots that kind of goes out in these chevrons at these angles, those are windage dots. And each one of those, based on your ballistics, is going to have a certain mile/hour value. So with this one, it's going to be about 4 miles an hour of wind on each dot. So if I hold up 3.2 mils, and if it's an 8-mile-an-hour wind that I'm seeing through the scope or picking up on a wind meter, then I can hold off 2 windage dots. And it absolutely works. This is the best way that I have ever nailed down targets at different distances. There's a lot of guesswork that goes into what we do, and what this reticle does is it starts to eliminate variables and turn them into known parameters. Now, this is the least expensive way that you can get into a Tremor 3 or a Tremor 5. That doesn't mean it's cheap. This is a $1,500 scope. But compared to the others, yeah, it's actually about the least that I think you can spend on the market right now. This is the Horus Hover 5 to 20 by 50 millimeter scope. This big old objective lens gobbles up a lot of light into dusk and even beyond, and it provides a lot of resolution, great brightness, and it all holds up edge to edge. Now, as far as that image goes, it's not going to run with the big boys like the Leupold Mark V. That's one of the sharpest scopes that I've ever had the pleasure to look through. But you're looking at a scope that's going to cost probably about twice as much as this, or maybe another 50% more at least. But this one is quite sharp, and you can see all the details that you're looking for. You can read the mirage, you can see little stuff blowing on the wind, you can see dust going down the road, you can watch swaying grass and leaves and all that stuff to be able to figure out what the wind is doing so that you can make that perfect hit. Like I mentioned, this is a 5 to 20, so at that highest magnification, this is essentially a varmint scope. You're going to be able to see lots of tiny little details, tiny little animals, tiny targets, and if you crank this back to 5x, it's not exactly going to be, a good defensive sort of magnification, but for practical targets between, say, 100 yards out to, oh gosh, as far as you want to go, probably out to about 1,000 yards, this is going to be wonderfully functional, and you'll be able to see lots of details about what you're doing. One cool thing about having a 4x zoom ratio on this is that since the Horus Tremor 3 or Tremor 5 reticle that's in here is in the first focal plane, a 4x zoom ratio is going to work really well with that. You're not going to make the reticle too large and, kind of thick with those stadia. It's not going to get too thick and nasty. And then when you zoom out to 5x, it's not going to be too tiny that you can't see it anymore. Especially in daylight like this, you should have no trouble at all seeing what you're after in here. I think that was a pretty good choice on their part. But just be forewarned that, at 5x, you're not going to be dealing with targets that are within 100 yards very much, unless you're dealing with rimfire. And that actually brings us to one really cool thing about this scope. This actually has a parallax and focus adjustment down to a very close 25 yards. So you can actually use this on a rimfire rifle. If you want to do really good precision work and be able to deal with those wind drifts at some of the close distances as well, you can drop this on there and it's going to be functional. There's one big thing I should point out while we're looking at that side parallax adjustment and at the zoom ring. Both of these feel just perfect. They are so smooth. They have just enough tension to them. They are just floating through liquid, and they feel very similar. Both of these have enough tension on them that you're not going to accidentally spin them, but at the same time, you don't have to fight them and accidentally move your rifle while you're spinning. Maybe with the zoom, you might move the rifle a little bit, but here with the side parallax adjustment, it's just gonna pop to the exact spot that you want, and it's not gonna disturb anything. And the reason why all of the controls on this scope feel so good, it's made in Japan. And my gosh, they do a really good job. Back here on this end, the fast focus eyepiece is not that fast. It doesn't have a lot of the that kind of quick slop that you get with a bunch of these where it just rolls a little too easily. This one, once you find your perfect diopter adjustment, it's gonna stay there. Love that. Really good job, guys. This feels wonderful, and it's not going to accidentally spin on me in the field. Those controls continue through the elevation and windage turrets, and let me show you some peculiarities about these. This is a kind of a small turret up top. Now, it has really good purchase. It has some really sharp knurling up top, and so you can very easily grab this with gloves or with skin, and you can spin this. And this has kind of very large differences between each of the nocks, each of these positions. This is actually 5 milliradians around. So this is a milliradian scope all the way around, left and right, and in the reticle. And this one has a lot less travel than you're typically gonna get with a tactical scope. You're gonna get half. You're gonna get 5 milliradians instead of 10 all the way around. There are some good reasons for this. This is a scope that for the most part, you're not going to dial. And you're going to dial this in order to set your zero, but because of the way that this reticle works, you're going to get it zeroed at 100 yards, and then you're probably not going to touch this stuff ever again, at least for practical shots. You're just going to use the reticle, hold over, and then hold off the correct wind dots, and then you're going to make your shot that way. Now, if you do want to use the turrets, I have tested both of them, the elevation and the windage, and they track perfectly. They are wonderful. One thing I should point out about this, if you're concerned about, okay, what's a horoscope? Horoscope? Anyway, this is actually really a Nightforce SHV. This just has a reduced size of the objective lens here, which is going to save you some weight and a couple other things. But yeah, this is a Nightforce scope. So that's why we have really good tracking, and that's why this should have a really good track record and be really tough for you guys out in the outdoors. But yeah, when it comes to the clicks themselves feel wonderful. There's not much sound. You have to listen over the cicada. Yeah, not much to hear, but it feels really positive. And this is one that you would be able to feel through gloves. Once you're in one of the detents, the knob can just barely move. It's really not any wiggle. It's gonna mess anything up, but it essentially locks down into position. So now let's talk about the weirdness of the windage knob that you see right here. You can see that it's covered. And that's typically not something you're gonna see on a tactical scope. But again, remember, windage is going to be dealt with by the reticle and not by dialing. Now this is totally up to it if you want to. You can actually click through this. You get 5 milliradians around again. And actually this one's louder. Yeah, feels pretty darn good. So it has every bit as good a feel as this one, but yeah, it's just meant to be kind of tucked away under here. Once you have set your zero, you're gonna leave that and you're going to use those wind dots to make the shot. The hover was just stupid easy to zero in the first place. This is a scope with its perfect tracking that all I did was just, you know, I did my bore sight, took a shot, saw where it ended up, used the reticle to figure out how many milliradians it was off, adjusted by here, and then the second shot was just straight through the middle. This scope tracks wonderfully, and one thing that I should point out for those of you that have fantasies of taking this scope out to some mile shots, you can forget about it. This is a 30 millimeter tube, not a 34 or 35 or a 40, and so you don't get much tracking on here. You get 17 and a half mils of travel, total travel up and down, and so at the very least, you're gonna wanna get yourself a 20 MOA or a 30 MOA base on your rifle. If you wanna put this on an AR, which I very much recommend, yeah, get yourself some kind of 20 MOA or 30 MOA compensating mount. and make sure you're kind of, angling that scope down so you can make your longer shots. With it in a mount like that, I think that you would have no trouble getting this scope out to 1,000 yards. Of course, you can do that just using the reticle if you want. But if you want to dial for some of those more extreme shots, like I mentioned, this tracks perfectly, and so it's going to get the job done. If you want to be able to get, some extra distance out of that and ignore the wind dots and just use the regular Stadia for calling your wind, yeah, you can totally do that. Or you can stack the two. If you want to get out to, some of the longer distances, you can dial until this stops, and then you can use the reticle to make that hit. All right, let's dig into some specs here. Okay, I mentioned that we have 17.5 mils up and down, 14.5 left and right. So again, this is really not a scope that's designed for dialing, but if you need to, you can. Total mass on this, 28.88 ounces. So yeah, it is a heavy scope. It's a tactical scope. Don't expect this to be something that you're going to use on an offhand rifle unless you just really feel like it. But this is going to be something you want to use supported. So you can go off a monopod, bipod, tripod in order to make a shot off a barricade, a berm, go prone, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that you have something to kind of take up the extra weight on this. Its eye relief is a bit on the close side when you're up at 20x, so you're looking at 2.5 inches of eye relief. You're going to be pretty close to the scope when you are zoomed all the way in. When you're zoomed all the way out, you are at 3.7 inches, which is plenty for magnums and things. But I think overall, if you're going to use something with a lot of recoil to it, I'm talking about a big magnum, then I would at the very least make sure that I am really braced up behind the rifle so that I don't get punched in the eyeball. 2.5 inches of eye relief is not that great. So that's the scope. This does come with some goodies. You get the usual lens cloth for cleaning the lenses. And this sunshade that you see attached on this end, no, it didn't come with it. You're gonna have to order this separately. Just get the Nightforce SHV sunshade. I like it when they throw them in the box, but in this case, they didn't. But one cool thing that I should point out about this is that since this is essentially a Nightforce scope, this is compatible with Tenebrex and Kill Flash products. So if you want to get Tenebrex, some of their nice, very expensive flip caps, or you want to get one of their Kill Flash ARDs, anti-reflective devices, you can actually get those because it's a Nightforce. Now one thing that they did throw in the box is this rubber shield right here. It's just kind of a monokini style, and it does go all the way around the sunshade as well. It's got a good spring to it, and it's going to help to keep out a lot of the crud that some of the cheaper ones will allow to get through. This actually seals up pretty well. I mentioned that the scope is $1,500, but for an extra $300, which I recommend that if you get one of these or anything with one of the Tremor reticles, there's a special package that you can get. For an extra $300, you can pick up these two right here. This is the Horus Laser Rangefinder and the Horus Wind Meter. Actually, it's a whole weather station. And the way that these two work, these are actually Bluetooth capable devices. So we'll take a look at the wind meter first, or I should say the weather station. This little guy right here can pick up your wind speeds, and it has all kinds of really cool functions like being able to tell you what your average wind speed is. It can tell you what your minimum is, your maximum is, or what your current speed is if you want to be able to nail that shot that way. This will pick up your temperature. So right now it's telling me that with the sun going down here in Oklahoma, it's 95.7 degrees. And like I said, this is a whole weather station. So let's see what our barometric pressure looks like. All right, we got 29.18 inches of mercury, which can be switched to millibar. So yeah, we're looking at 988 millibar, just with a little press of a button. And then we also have some extra modes down here, like, okay, let's switch over to altitude. It tells me that I'm at 669 feet. And let's go to temperature and relative humidity, and here we go. Humidity right now is at 48.3%. So yeah, it's Oklahoma. It's really humid, and I'm kind of stewing in my own juices right now. All of these values can be kind of switched around to whatever units you use. So on the wind meter side, right now I've got it in miles per hour. and this can go really, really low. It can get down to less than a mile an hour and be able to tell me like 0.2 miles per hour. It's telling me I'm at 3.3, 2.7, okay. But you can do kilometers per hour. Or here's meters per second, yeah, kilometers per hour, feet per minute, knots. Okay, that's pretty cool. And that's how this runs with all of these. And the cool thing about this is whatever data that you pick up, if you have the Horus app on your phone, which is a very nice ballistics calculator, you kind of put your ballistics in before you go out, and what you can do is you just kind of get up on the berm or whatever, and you pick up your atmospherics for the day, capture it with this. You just press a capture button, it picks up what's on here, and it's going to immediately correct your shot. You don't even have to hit like calculate or anything, it's just done. It's going to show you not only how much you need to hold over, giving you those values, but it'll actually show you on the reticle where you need to hold. You tell it, I've got a Tremor 3, and it's gonna show you, okay, here's where you hold, and just put a little dot right there, hold this. That applies to the laser rangefinder as well. This has a range of 2,000 yards, and you can send whatever data you pick up for your shot, again, right to the app. You can tell it to capture, and it'll just create a new log, say, okay, here's your target distance, and then immediately fix that shot for you and show you what you should be doing. The cool thing about this is that if you get into an area where you think, you know, maybe some animals will be coming through later, or maybe you have a defensive situation where you want to know a bunch of kind of key locations before the shooting starts, then you can pick that up with here. So you get your atmospherics, go around, click different targets that you think might be reasonable distances or places where like maybe animals might emerge. And then it's going to save all of those onto this, and you can just kind of flip between them. So if you've been taking shots at 600 yards and suddenly animals come out at 300, all you have to do is just in the app, just flip over to that target, and then you can start taking those shots. And this is something that I have tested in the real world, and I've actually used this whole system not just with the Tremor reticles and with this scope or any of the others that have Horus reticles. I've actually used this with all kinds of stuff. Since it'll tell me either mils or MOA how to hold, I can use any reticle at all. And so I take these out with my ARs, with any kind of scope, any kind of hunt, and it all just works together really well, and it gets me the most precise hits that I ever have made before. Just the capability of being able to get the correct altitude density and, you know, figure out exactly what the wind is doing and just how, you know, thick that air is that you're going through. It makes all the difference in the world when you're trying to make a hit on a heart instead of a lung. It really, really works. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. If you have any questions about the scope or the whole system, which by the way, you can just buy these by themselves, and these are a steal if you just get these all by themselves. No matter what kind of scope you have, you don't have to have a Tremor. I just like the precision that I get with this, with any scope. And so if you want to pick those up, I would highly recommend it. But yeah, if you have any questions about any of it, please let me know. I'll happily answer them. I've done a bunch of testing with this scope and the Tremor reticles in general. So yeah, I'll see you all around. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.